Can you tell me the reason for the increase and how does the rate, or how was it established for me, the rate?
Will be part of our discussion tonight. Was Paula, your public comment is for us. It's a comment, not for us to answer questions here right now.
Okay.
So, but as a part of the meeting, we'll be discussing the rate and what it means and how it was coming into effect.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs.
So in order to kind of expound on what she was saying and then get back to what you said, what I'm understanding is you all are going to discuss it. And then at that point, can we still ask questions? Because what if what your discussion doesn't answer what we're here for tonight? Do you understand? Did I phrase that okay?
Yes, I understand. We will provide you ways to have contact with us if a discussion doesn't, but we don't acknowledge questions from the crowd outside of public comment.
Okay, so if I commented, you all are probably all very aware of the tax situation and the horrible amounts we're going to have to try to pay this year. In the event that some people can't pay that, my question is, what is your plan to educate our children? You're not going to have the money to work with. So I'll let you have your discussion and then hopefully that'll take care of that.
I will say this, I'm sure that us sitting here and your questions being stated already, I'm sure that we will plan to make sure that is addressed.
Okay, all right, thank you.
That concludes our public comment portion of the meeting. Next, we'll go into our tax rate hearing.
Mr. President.
Yes,
I move the board approve the proposed tax rate of 5.1994 for incidental and 1.1206 for debt service for a total tax rate of $6.32 in compliance with RSMO section 137.073.2 based on Jackson County Notice of Assessed Valuation 2023.
motion made and second.
And Mr. President, I would just start out the discussion by saying that that is not, we're not raising the tax levy by this motion.
Yeah, Mr. Gibson.
Yeah, I'll go into some detail about that. Good evening, board, president, vice president, other members of the board, Dr. Martin Knox. Tonight, we are going to conduct the annual tax rate hearing required by the state ordinance section 137.073.2. I'll be presenting some information regarding the history of this tax rate and its impact on the budget. Ultimately, of course, recommending passage of our rate that we have, by the way, that we've held since 2010. So we have not requested an increase in our actual tax rate for over 13 years. So the next slide, you'll see what our tax rate history looks like. There we go. So with that information, you'll see that when we collect taxes, they're split into two different buckets. So we're looking at our operating levy, which is how we pay for a majority of our operations, as well as our debt service levy, which pays for our bond debt. And so the total tax levy at 6.32 is the the rate that I'm talking about that has been in place since 2010. And just to give a little bit of an explanation, there are two variables when we start talking about the tax. There are two variables that come into play. One being the actual tax rate, the other being the assessed valuation. So that is the value that the county assesses your property at. And so that is correct to the point that was made earlier today that the Jackson County has chosen to increase their assessed valuation at a rate that was much higher than what they'd normally assess those values at. And we'll get to a slide that may show some of that history. So if we would go to the next slide. So this is the way that the 6.32 is split over the last 5 years. You can see the blue representing what has been used for our operating, going to the far right, which is the upcoming school year. 5.1994 is the amount that we were allowed to increase it to, given the vote, but of the tax levy transfer. But that was a transfer. So if you look at how much we devoted to the levy under the debt service portion in red, we decreased that amount. So it ultimately still remained at a 6.32 level for the taxpayer. Moving to the next slide, you'll see our assessed valuation history. And so this starts to tell a little bit of a story. What's most important in my mind is to look at the far left. So if you look at the residential, that is the vast majority of the amount of money that we get from this tax. And if you notice, from 2020 to 2021, there was actually a decrease in that year. And then a single digit, I think a 7% increase the year after, and even less than a 1% increase between 22 and 23. And so basically, from my perspective, what Jackson County was forced to do, not necessarily forced to do, but what they chose to do was make up for some of what I consider to be some slow increases during a time when the economy was in much better shape. And so essentially this year is what I consider to be a catch up when you compare the economy, the increase in property values against those years when they did not reflect the increases that I think were realistic. Absolutely. Oh yeah.
So, on 2024, they were at the bottom. People pay their taxes in November. Is that for 2023 or 2024?
So 2024 is the fiscal year. So we always use the end. That's correct. That's correct. So you're paying it essentially in 2023. But in this presentation, that represents 2024 as the end of our fiscal year. And that's why you see such a dramatic increase. So if you look at that $509 million from 2023, that is what we actually received last year, last December. And this is what we project to receive, that $715 million, just in the residential portion of the tax. Okay, moving on to the next slide, you'll see, let's see, so that is our, I'm sorry, was that the same slide? So I think that's more of the same. On to the next, there we go. So with that particular slide, I draw your attention to the far right. This is another way of showing how the increase is impacting our budget. If you look at the blue, that represents the property tax and the significant increase in this particular given year, as well as the increase in the red, which is our operating side of the levy. On to the next slide, you'll see, now this would take it down to the individual level. So this would probably help to answer some of the questions that as a homeowner, what impact this has on your tax rate, or on your bill, for taxes. So, we've checked the average home price, which is that second from the right column. And that information is generally accurate. It's just taking basically the high end, comparing it to the low end and coming up with an average. And there is the tax rate effect. So while this year, while Jackson County did increase the value significantly, they are actually, in my mind, still just catching up to the average home price. So that piece of data is coming from what houses are actually selling for. And if you were to put a column next to the general increases in Jackson County assessed valuations, they would not match the trend that you see in home price value. And that's why I think this is really what I would consider a catch-up year. Because if you were to look at, for instance, 2021, the difference between 2024 and 2021 is nowhere near the difference that the county was. If you were to look at the trend, they weren't on that path at all. They did not match that. Whereas this year, they're much more closer to matching what the average home price would sell for. On to the next slide. This is just turning that same graph into a visual. And while the last year on the previous slides showed a pretty dramatic increase in that final column, that was because that is really reflective of what Jackson County did. Whereas this is just simply showing the natural impact of the economy on home prices. And then the last slide just talks about what all goes into the calculation of the tax rate. So we've got the assessed property valuation, we've got the voter authorized limitation. So we have to actually go to the voters in order to increase from that 6.32 percentage. That is beyond our control. The tax rate ceiling is in place. So there is a maximum for how much we can devote to our operating levy. And of course, we have to cover our bills with regard to the bond. So that is our debt service payment. And then our debt service balances also impact our bonding capacity, which is also related to our tax calculation. And that's it. That's what I have for you tonight.
As a part of your calculation, as far as I remember in previous reports, there were there's some given to the fact of people that not paying.
Yes, so there is a delinquent column that I did not put on here, but that's an element that we have to be concerned about, because it does impact ultimately what we receive. And I've built in a pretty conservative projection on how much
it's built into these numbers.
Correct. So I'm pretty conservative with that, particularly given how many appeals we have this year, and the likelihood that a lot of those appeals will win, and so it will reduce our ultimate net receipts. And I have that reflected in the budget.
Any further questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Gibson.
You are welcome.
Guess I would just make one comment just about delinquencies and appeals. It's an amount we will recover at some point when those play out through the system. And they're not so significant a number, as someone mentioned earlier, that it would keep us from educating our students.
Absolutely not. So to that point, that's a good point. So the numbers you just saw, if we come close to what I estimated, that still ends up to about 40% of our total revenue, just in revenue. The district has over 100 different revenue streams. We have all of the grants and the federal funding, state funding, but 40% of our total funding is so while even if several of the appeals are held and the county reduces the dollars, I feel that we're pushing.
So, Mr. Gibson, are you saying that the tax hike that came from Jackson County, the school district had no control over that?
Correct. So the two variables I spoke about earlier are basically the tax rate, 6.32%.
Mr. Gibson, hold on a
Yes.
second. Can you repeat your question with your microphone?
Okay, Mr. Gibson, the question I had was, just for clarification, that the school district had no control over the tax hike or the rate increase that came from Jackson County?
That is correct. The 6.32% that they apply to the assessed valuation is the only portion of the equation that the school district controls. And that 6.32% is what has been in place, like I said, for over the last 13 years. And so regardless of what the county chooses to do on the assessed valuation side, we can only control that percentage rate, which we've remained consistent with over the years.
So some of the increase has to be answered from Jackson County. You have to contact Jackson County and receive answers from Jackson County
Yes.
concerning your tax rate hikes, and
And
see how that can be worked out.
They have done a pretty good job based on what I have learned in listening to appeals. They have extended the deadline to listen to appeals. And so for anyone who is not satisfied with the number that they've seen on their preliminary bill, I would recommend that you appeal, that you go ahead and reach out to, they've made it pretty simple to do. The process is pretty simple, and they will listen. And what the basis for their decisions are right now are to take the information that I've just presented about the home price, what is realistic in their minds based on data that they've collected about the location that you're in and what houses are selling for at the time, basing their decisions on that information. So if you come armed with, I would say to the community, if you have that information and you think that your bill exceeds that level, then I would strongly recommend an appeal, and that's the avenue that I think that our community members should take in order to make sure that they're being treated fairly with regard to this tax.
Could you speak to our budget, our finances, as far as the tightening of our
Yes.
belts? Because I think also what might be, insinuated is that we should consider lowering our
Yes,
rate.
so while that 6.32% is the rate that we have applied from the time that the voters approved that 13 years ago, the law does allow for you as a governing body to back off that rate if you so choose. One of the things I caution for you in doing so is to take into consideration all of the financial information I provided about where we stand, not only in terms of how much we're able to provide to our students in terms of programming and things like that, but also to our staff. And that the school district is not in a position right now. We are not near the top when it comes to comparisons to other districts and neighboring districts. And if what I believe our number one objective is to attract and retain quality teachers and other staff, we are going to have to continue to compete and bring those salary numbers up to a level that will keep us there. This revenue continues to allow us to have those conversations.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson.
You are welcome. Yep, you're welcome.
Any further comment? All right.
I think that appellate appeal process is still. I believe it was, we'll have to very get on it, but I think it was the end of September.
All right. Let's take a vote. Motion passes. Next, we have a strategic planning update for information. Dr. Griner.
Good evening, President Burton, Vice President Watson, members of the board, Dr. Martin Knox. Tonight it is my pleasure to cede the mic to a couple of my esteemed colleagues to share some of the work that they are engaged in around strategic planning. Over the last several months, we've brought information to the board regarding our strategic planning progress. We are excited about our strategic plan for this year, and we have over 30 strategic planning projects that are happening around the district, all aimed and are aligned to Board of Education goals. So tonight we have our assistant superintendents, Dr. Anthony Moore and Miss Jessica Bassett, here to share just a small glimpse into some of their work. We'll start with Dr. Moore, and Dr. Moore will talk with you about a strategic planning project that is aligned to our Board of Education goal number 1 around academic achievement and college and career readiness. Dr. Moore.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. President Burton and Vice President Watson and rest of the board, good evening, and Dr. Moore Knox. I'd like to share a few things with you. Set my timer because I have a limited time. So goal 1, first of all, continuous growth towards mastery improvement for every student through relevant and rigorous curriculum instruction, which is in goal 1.1, student achievement and career, college and career readiness. In this area, the objective is meaningful student work will be grounded in culturally responsive connections to the world. And so my deliverable is to identify and communicate attributes of meaningful, culturally relevant teaching practices and student work by level. So elementary, middle school, and high school for the district. So my project title is to create a resource bank of culturally responsive and culturally relevant teaching practices. And for the record, culturally relevant technically and culturally responsive basically are synonymous practices, as well as curriculum materials, lessons, and so forth for K-12. And we're going to post these on our curriculum hub. And so already, the very first thing I guess we need to do, as I met with Tyler Britt, our Director of Curriculum Instruction, and with some of the curriculum coordinators, and I've been having conversations with IoT, is the first thing is we have to do is really clearly define culturally responsive teaching. and what that means for our district. So we're really still in the process of that because we're also having conversations with principals and teachers as well. And then identifying resources. Some we already have embedded in some of our courses, but we want to kind of bring those out and have a special place on the hub where teachers can go get resources, as well as us design professional learning opportunities for teachers and principals in schools. Some of those that I will do, and sometime we'll bring in outside people. Also, constant collaboration with our curriculum coordinators, with our director of curriculum instruction, as well as with principals and teachers so far in developing this, and then reviewing the resources we already have. But also, I've been already set an appointment. I've been kind of reviewing some research and some resources from EAB, the company we're partnering with. They're going to be providing assistance. They've done some research projects. Also, I met with Scott Fuller, and he is going to share some resources, some things some other districts are doing as well. So as we ensure that as we build this hub of curriculum materials, is that we ask and get feedback from staff. The last thing is what I have on my plan to do is to get input from students. I've already talked to a couple students, but I want to make sure we do it from both schools, their groups, as well as the student leaders to ensure that we have a student voice represented as we create these opportunities. Any questions?
Detail about, you talked about looking at some of the resources that you already have. And I know as dynamics change within our schools, what would that equity audit or that bidding process look like for resources that are already there?
Well, the first thing we want to do is make sure it's representative in terms of, for example, one of the biggest parts of culturally responsive teaching is differentiating instruction. It's been able to prepare lessons that meets the needs of individual learners, how students learn differently. We do look at ethnicity, but just period. Some kids are like more visual learners than they are auditory learners. Also, we haven't really categorized it, the resources. I've just been reviewing them so far. Also looking at just a lot of different resources. A couple universities we're looking at in terms of resources they have as well. But I can get you like maybe some samples of some specifics we've already pulled together.
That are being all input from different stakeholders. So will parents be part of that feedback and input as we're trying to educate not only teachers and staff with what these terms mean, but also educating them. I think that will go a long way with that engagement, the dynamics between, teachers, parents. I'd be interested in that.
I agree. Yeah, I had not planned that. I do have some parents on our culturally our district-wide cultural competency committee, and we will be also doing a lot of these too. But that's an excellent idea to reach out to some other parents as well.
I just think because people hear this terminology and it can be confused, and you're a lot about CRT. Well, what's this? What's culturally responsive practices? What's culturally responsive teaching? And people can get very confused.
Definitely.
And, messages get distorted with what exactly we mean when we can't get the parents engaged as well as students.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a very good point.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Moore. This is a great undertaking. And I appreciate the culturally responsive teaching, and kind of not to her point, but I know we have to start within first. So we have to make sure that our educators are responsible for our children, understand what it means to connect with our children from various backgrounds. So I appreciate that. We can support you all in this work that we have.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
I had a question I wanted to ask Mr. Moore.
Sure.
In trying to grow this program more, have you looked around the country at different districts to see if there's a model, a culturally responsive, teaching model somewhere that you can really look into and see, some examples of how success can be, how this program can be very successful?
Yeah, that's one of the things that Scott told me he's gonna be sharing with me, but that is one of the goals, is to look at some districts. And Scott also suggested that as we start rolling this out, is don't try to do the whole district at one time, but pick some schools that's like maybe one elementary school, one middle school, one high school, to do a pilot and to get it tight in those places first before you expand it district-wide, and get some teachers on board as well. That's an excellent idea, but he's supposed to be sending me some school district. That's an excellent idea. We will. We do have different trainings. Those normally done once at the building level. There's some we're planning for the whole district wide. That's one of the things we're talking about. But in terms of the 504 plan, that really depends on the actual 504, where they come together and decide on different either accommodations or different plans for that student. Yes, we have a district 504 coordinator who works closely with parents. That's Michelle Eagle. Yeah, she does. And so she ensures they do, and I'm sure it comes with, as far as IEP, what I would say would be through Amy Cusimano and her team. She's the director of special education.
Hey, let's make sure we turn on our mics. Let me do that.
Anything else?
Thank you, Dr. Moore.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the one, the only, Jessica Bassett.
Right. Good evening, Board President.
Good evening.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, doctors. Thank you for this opportunity to share my work and my project. I'm really excited about this project because if you look at the vision objective, this idea of students being co-creators of their career pathways and their goals. This is really exciting at the secondary level, because what we're doing is we are looking to make sure that we're providing relevance to the learning experience. The other thing that's really exciting about this goal is that 6-year plan to really make it that ICAP that will provide this individual career and academic planning piece for our students. It's something that we've started, but this project gives us an opportunity to expand upon that. And so one part of this project is centered around creating recreating or redesigning our course guide. We call it our CPEG, Career Educational Planning Guide, but it's our course guide. And what that's going to allow us to do is to make the connection between post-secondary options and ideas and dreams and goals, and put it right into the high school, so students are going to begin to plan accordingly to where they want to go. So some of the work that we've done to get there, coming in, I was able to look at some of the work that the real world learning team had already done. So they've already begun to look at the career clusters and begin to look at what we presently have in our course guide and how do some of these things line up. We did realize that we need to look more carefully at it to make sure that we are guiding students in the correct way. So that's some of the things that's going to be coming in our next step. We also had an opportunity to reach out and research other districts that have similar demographics, similar numbers, to see how they went about preparing for a career-focused curriculum and what their course guides look like. And then we also had conversations with districts that have actually already moved to career academy models, just to see what process did they take as they moved in that direction. We are at a place where we're just exploring right now. So what we as a what we call our CPEG redesign team, and I wanted to share that we were real thoughtful about the people that we brought onto our team. Of course, we have our curriculum director, Tyler Britt. We have our lead counselor for secondaries. And then we had to bring on Cheryl because she has just a great vision of how career pathways work in the classes and the course, how the courses have to be designed in a way to get students to that goal. And then we also, because we have real world learning coordinators that are a part of our school that work closely with students, they're a part of our team as we look to redesign. We had a wonderful first meeting and we just kind of brainstormed in that particular meeting. And we decided, since we are not academies, we can still pull the career clusters that have already been brought to us by DESE. And so what we decided to do is go through the guide and connect the actual career clusters with the symbols. So if you get a chance to look at that, each career cluster has a different color. It's in a hexagon. And so what we were looking at is how we put that hexagon next to the different courses. So when students and parents and even staff go into the course guide, they can see if I am interested, if my student is interested in the medical sciences, then I know every time I see the red hexagon, these are courses that are going to guide me in that way. If I am interested in another area, I can look for that hexagon and I can have that conversation with my parent. I can have that conversation with my counselor. And so this is the direction that we're looking to go into. Our next steps right now is to get moving on producing our first prototype to see how that looks and to get feedback from staff and students about what that looks and how do we improve it. You'll see that our goal, and we are pushing for our goal to have this redesigned, and it's actually my last slide. Our goal is to have this course guide done by December 12th. So we are working because it is our desire to have students use it when they do course requests in January. That's what we're pushing for. And so that's where we're going. No. No, we're pushing for them to use it when they get, they start their course requests in January and make those decisions with their families. And so that's what one of the pieces that we're in. The last thing I want to talk about is the market value asset piece. We also want to make sure that we are marking, showing students how they can get those market value assets. So within the course guide, we talked about being very clear about where they can get internships, which of the courses provide internships, client connected projects. We've been talking about the entrepreneurial piece and where they can get that. We because of Herndon and our connection with our other career techs, the industry recognized credentials, as well as a college credit. So all of those things will be important to be a part of that guide. And our team is ready to go. They're very excited about it. And we have set a goal of 90% of our 9th through 11th graders having initiated their ICAP. So that's where we're at this year. And this is kind of the fullness of this project. And this is for this year. So, any
Mr.
questions?
President, yes, I'm very excited about hearing all of this. And I was at the Real World Learning with a couple of our fellow board members to kind of hear our parents, talk about some of to hear you talk about different changes and some of the stuff that's coming. So I'm excited about this. And I guess with anything new, which is wonderful and positive, my only thing that I'd like to ask about, and hearing some of the feedback from the parents, just about access and being able to understand and some type of resources and onboarding, because I know even though things are out in like a course catalog and there's there are different ways of reaching people, just the human resources in being able to interpret some of these things, because it's very dynamic, but just making sure they're aware of all their options and choices. So I'm excited about it, but just want that to be a process where parents are just fully aware, so that they can help their kids as well.
I didn't really share this right now because we were waiting for the team to get together again. But one of the ideas that were actually out on the table is, how do we prepare for parents to be able to come in and share with them the new design?
Yes.
And so we reached out to both principals and talked to them a little bit about, looking at when we could plan this, where could it be? So it's before students reach that course, those course requests pieces. So we're looking for a date with them. So we kind of put it out there. We just don't have dates yet, but that was something that was actually we were thinking about, because we're hoping to both release it electronically, and then if we have to have paper copies, we will, but we want it to be accessible in a way where parents can access it no matter where they're at. So that was a part of the thinking. It just hasn't materialized yet, but it will.
I want this to be everywhere, where everywhere you look, when you go through our different schools. I mean, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I want to say, I think you guys are doing a tremendous job. I was at the Real World Learning, and I want to tell you that the two instructors that you have doing it, I think they're doing a tremendous job by going to the classrooms and getting the kids out and listening to them. I think it's like hugely important that we involve the students in helping it out. And the young man that you guys had speaking about his experience was like a tremendous impactful thing, so the other students will know that it's obtainable.
Yes.
And that they do really have an opportunity to get the understanding of knowing and the knowledge about it. And I even want to, and this is hard for me to actually say, that I think Dr. Penelope Martin Knox is doing an excellent job. And this is hard for me to say because of all the shots that she take at me anytime that we're out in public. But I do want to say that she is doing something tremendous in helping this whole situation out. And please don't put that on record.
Too late,
It's already there.
Mr. President.
I want to speak to this as well, because when you're sitting that share with students who come, actually before you even came on in this position, who talked about having opportunities just like this. And even though you didn't hear it, I know your leadership with Dr. Griner and Dr. Knox have talked about this, and the intentionality with having education outside the box for our district will make it, I think, will make it a destination point for students, because it's offered in other areas, but I think the way and the creativity that you all will put into it, I think will make it even more successful and even more impactful for our students. I have a sixth grader coming up, and so you got opportunity to be able to look at things like this. I think it'll make their education journey that much more enjoyable and make them want to stay the course. You got that 6-year plan, you can see it through, and then we're able to do that research at the end and say, hey, what things worked well, what didn't work well. So I want to commend you for this, and your excitement behind it, I think will definitely help, push it forward.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I wanted just to say to Ms. Bassett, I was also at that meeting, and I was so impressed again with the student response. And when we had the challenges with the young lady and her mom carrying on, that young man offered to be her mentor.
Yes.
It was a student who offered to take on another student who was having some difficulty, and telling her, I will mentor you through the process until you catch on.
Yeah.
I was impressed.
Yes, we have some awesome students, and what we're doing now, the Real World Learning coordinators are doing, are finding other, I believe they call them ambassadors, to help get more students to come into the Real World Learning offices and to begin to take advantage of some of the things that are there. So that's one of the new steps that they're taking, to just kind of spread that, to make sure more students know. And I think one of the things, the impactful things that student said, that they may not listen to you all, but they'll listen to us. And I absolutely believe that. So,
And I do want to clarify that the parent was not carrying on. She was just venting her feelings.
yes. Yeah.
Mr. President, so as you guys take tours and kind of look at districts that have similar demographics, and you're mentioning how the students are going to be co-creators, will they also be able to go on some of those visits to some of these different schools? And then that way you kind of still have that authentic feedback right at the moment, so that they they're conversing with you?
We had not put that on a list of things to do, but that's something that we could consider. That's not something that we.
Yeah, just include them in the entire process.
Okay.
Mr. President. So the ICAP is a 6-year plan.
Yes.
When will they start developing that?
So they do their first work with it in the 8th grade year, and then they revisit it each year with their counselor. So,
So
yeah, it's the
to
6 years.
extend Beyond.
Yeah, it's the
graduation.
idea of thinking 2 years after high school. So that's why the 6 years are there. So. Mhm.
Yeah, good. So the clusters and hexagons, where are they gonna see that?
It's actually going to be in the CPEC or the course guide. And so what we're going to do next to each of the courses that are there, we're going to include those hexagons in there with the colors so they can kind of match that up. So at the beginning of it, we're looking at making sure we give a really good explanation of what the career clusters are, which careers actually fall within each cluster. So when they go through that book, say they've chosen nursing, I can go through and see which classes fit within that cluster. And then when they have that final conversation with their counselor, they can really narrow that down even more based off of their ability.
It seems to make a lot of sense because we've done that with Project Lead the Way. So it makes sense to do that with a bunch of different career type.
If I could add just one thing to that. So in addition to having a course enrollment guide that's more informative and more directed to help students and families, actually developing a course that will help our students explore what they're good at and also understand where do their passions lie. So actually bringing as part of a freshman seminar course that every freshman will take in the district. And part of that journey their freshman year is to really explore their passions and their talents to better connect their coursework selections to that ICAP. And so really being much more intentional to help our students understand not only what do we have to offer, but what are they good at and what are they interested in pursuing?
And since we have such a high transparency rate, how will we handle a 10th grader or 11th grader that transfers into our district?
It's a great question.
We kind of talked about that too.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
so what we've talked about with the counselors is when they come in and they do the enrollment piece and they look at their schedules, they also will have them complete that if they don't already have one on record. So it's many times if they come from another Missouri district, they've already completed one there. And so we also talked about possibly including that on the records request from here on out, so that they include that ICAP from the other districts. So.
But in terms of like a junior comes in and didn't take freshman seminar, I don't know that we have an answer yet on how we would address that.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Yep. But I think for a student that's moving from one high school to another, which happens quite a bit for kids in our district, knowing that if I'm leaving Ray High, I'm moving into that freshman seminar experience at Ray South. So that not only helps me with my own academic pursuits, but it also helps build, part of this is to build school spirit and attachment and why I'm a Cardinal, why I'm a Blue Jay. So there's a lot of things that'll be rolled into a seminar course in addition to career planning that really help give our kids a sense of attachment to the school and just build that, hey, I'm in Raytown and I'm special.
It'll be required for credit course.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. President, I move that the board adjourn the special Board of Education meeting at 7:57 PM.
Motion made in second. Right,